So this here is an Olympus OM-1 film SLR camera. They were originally released in 1972, making them about the same age as Melbourne's Hitachi Suburban trains. This one, I don't know how old this one is, but they were, we assume, early 70s, so it'd be getting on towards 50 years old. And this was my family's camera when I was growing up in the 90s. They were really like an enthusiast level film SLR of the time. They were made in Japan, built incredibly well, and 50 years on, this camera's seen a lot of use. It's been spent a lot of time in rough weather, bushwalking, all sorts of things, and it still functions perfectly fine. So I'm not going to do a review, that seems a little bit pointless. This is more, I'm just going to show you how to use it basically. You might have an OM-1 that you found somewhere and you'd like to give it a go. So I'm just going to explain the basic operation of it. Some of my regular viewers might think this is a little bit off topic for this channel. However, this was the first camera I ever used, and I did use it to take some of my first railway photographs, so it does have a bit of railway history behind it, I suppose. So this one has got a 50mm 1.8 lens, which was basically the standard kit lens that these cameras usually come with. You can release the lens like so, and you can see the mirror there leading up to the pentaprism, which is up the top. You don't have to be quite as careful with a film camera not to get dust in there. Obviously it's not a good idea, but with a digital camera, when you do that, if dust goes in, it can land on the sensor and cause enormous problems, whereas with a film camera it's much easier to just blow dust out, so it's not super critical. First thing you probably want to do is check, in case you don't know, you want to check if there's any film in there already. So this is where the film canister goes, underneath there, and on this side this is the film winding on control, and that's your shutter button to take a photo. It's really important that you don't open the back of the camera if you don't know if there's a film in there or not, because if there is a film in there, you're going to ruin it when you open it and expose it to the light. So to check, we just try and wind this on. Now you can see it's actually not letting me take it all the way there, it's hitting a stop. That's because it wants me to take a photo. So basically it alternates wind, photo, wind, photo. So what I'll do is I'll take a photo, now it'll let me wind it on, and you can see this one here didn't move. So I'm going to do that again. Watching this, it stayed still. That means there's no film in there, because if there was a roll of film, when I pulled that forward, that would rotate as well as I pulled the film through. So now we know there's no film in there, it's safe to open the back. So this thing here lifts up, and then you pull it up one more time, and the back pops open. So you can see here, that's where the film canister goes. It pulls across and it winds into here. And it's quite safe to take a picture while this is open. So again, wind it forward, click, you can very quickly see that happening there. Now, what we're going to do is load a film. What I've got here is a Fujifilm 36 shot Superior 200 ASA. ASA is just old people speak for ISO, it means the same thing. Usually on film cameras it's called ASA, and on digital cameras it's called ISO. Now, what we do, we lift that up and the film sits in like that. Now what we want to do, you can see this thing here has got teeth, and that is what engages with those holes there. We're going to pull it gently out of the canister, and then this second one here has these slots in it. So what we're going to do is feed the end of the film into one of those slots. Alright, let's wind that forward a bit. There you go, now you can see it's started to wrap around there, and those teeth have engaged on the film there. You don't have to worry about it being totally engaged, because when we close the back it's going to push the film onto that. So first of all, push that back down. We'll close the back. Now the first thing we have to do is wind it forward a bit, because that film that was visible will all be exposed to light, because that's what we did. So we'll just take a couple of shots, maybe two, and we want to wait to see this pick up some slack here. It's not doing it. Well, if I wind it back, that should take the slack up a bit. There we go, now it's engaged. So that's probably cost us a couple of photos in winding that on, but that's the way it goes with film. You don't do it because it's good, you do it because it's old. So, I should say too, I really should have shown you this before I put the film in. The way to tell if your film has already been used or not is when I pulled it out, it had that little tab of film sticking out of the canister. That generally means it's unused. If you can't see that tab, if it's fully inside the canister, then it probably has been used. So not definite, but that's your best way of telling. Now the first thing we have to do is tell the camera what ASA film is in it. And that's just so that it knows, so the light meter knows what to tell us. And you can see this dial here, it says ASA. It's currently set to 400. It lines up with that tiny little slot on the side of the shutter button. We want to change that to 200 because we put a 200 film in. And I'm possibly have to push that down. Yep. There we go. So it's a fully manual camera. If you don't know how to shoot manual, you'd best go and have a quick read up on shutter speeds and apertures. But basically we've got two controls here. We've got the shutter speed ring, which is a little bit difficult to maneuver. It goes from very fast shutter speed, 1,000th of a second at that end, right through to bulb mode, which means if you hold the shutter down it will stay open for as long as you hold it. So a normal good handheld shutter speed, put it on 125th, because we're using 200 ASA film. It's not a very fast film, so we won't be able to use a super fast shutter speed. The other control we have here is the aperture, which is on the lens itself. f1.8, wide open, lots of light, but give us really shallow depth of field, down to f16, which will make it quite dark and give us a very deep depth of field. Now it also has a focusing ring. It's this here. Focus is fully manual, so you will have to focus it before every picture. Alright, so we want to take a picture. First thing we want to do is make sure we've wound it on. If it's doing that, that means we're wound on, we're all good. Now, I'm just going to look through, see if I can actually look through the viewfinder here. Kind of. Okay, so this camera I'm filming on, the lens is too big to look through the viewfinder, so I'm just going to use my phone for this for a second. There we go. Now, you can see on that left-hand side is the light meter, and at the moment the needle is pointing down, which just means that it's turned off, and above it you can see there's a negative and positive. So the first thing we need to do is turn on the light meter, which is this switch here, and it's the only electric part of this camera. If it doesn't work, it probably means that you need to change the battery. There's a small button battery in here which will last for years, but you've just got to remember to turn that off to try and save battery power afterwards. It doesn't use a lot of power, but it will go flat eventually. So if we look through here, now the light meter's turned on, it's actually pointing up above positive, which means that we're exposing too much at the moment. So what we're going to do, I've still got it set to f1.8, which is far too wide for this bright outside sunny day. So I'm going to shut that down. So as I turn that, you can see the light meter dropping. And it's now on f8. So we're now shooting at 200 ASA, 125th of a second at f8, which is a pretty good sunny day exposure, I suppose. You can see the 8 is lined up straight across the top there. So we now need to focus our image. So turning that focus dial. It's going to be pretty hard to see with this setup, but you want to make sure, let's imagine that that fence post over there is our subject. And you want to make sure that's nice and sharp. If it was a person, you'd want to make sure their eyes are nice and sharp. So we've focused, we've set the light meter in the middle, we've checked that the film's wound on, we can now take a picture. So we just press the shutter button, you can see the screen blanked out a second as the mirror flipped up, and now we need to wind on, and we're ready for our next shot. Just here you can see this little number, that's how many pictures we've taken. So that's, it says 4, I've only taken 1, but like, as I say, I lost a few when I was winding it on. We know because we remember when we put the film in that this is a 36 shot film. So that will give you some idea of how many shots you have left. It's never 100% accurate, so you may find that you get a few more than 36, or it might be a couple of less. It's usually slightly more, but basically just keep going until you can't wind that anymore, and then you've got just the end of your film. But always remember, whenever you even adjust to a slightly different position, you will need to check that light meter again, because the light is constantly changing, especially when you're outside and if you change angles. Yes, you need to check it every single time. You need to focus every single time as well. Camera also has a self timer, which is I think clockwork, and you push it down to the side and then it comes up and then takes the picture. I can't actually demonstrate that because that's broken on this camera. It's also got, I think you can attach a hot shoe to that thing there, and it also has an input for a remote flash there. Now you might notice that the shutter button has like a little screw thread in the middle of it. That's for attaching a cable release, which is basically a remote control. It's a mechanical remote control. A lot of people actually still call them cable releases today, and that's why, because it's just a physical cable which screws in there. So let's take one more picture. Take a picture of that tricycle. It's not really going to be in shot, but let's take a picture towards that tricycle. Just putting my special high-tech viewfinder cam on there. There we go, we've got this lovely scene with tricycle handlebars, a rock wall, and a metal chicken. Now as you can see, the light meter has dropped down slightly. So what I'm going to do is move from f8 to f5.6. It's back in the middle again. Let's focus. That looks pretty good. There we go. Alright, now I'm just going to go and take another 30 or so photos to get to the end of the film, and then I'll show you what to do. Okay, so my remaining shots indicator is now showing 35 there, and it's starting to get a little bit tough to pull it across. I reckon that's just about it. Just going to take a few more pictures randomly of the sky. There we go, that's it. So now the film's been completely used up. What we want to do is rewind it onto the roll so it's complete inside the canister so that we don't expose the film. Now the first thing we have to do, I'm just going to turn the light meter off, that probably doesn't matter. Around the front here there's this rewind switch. We have to turn that to the R position for rewind. And then this thing turns into a magical little handle. And if you think about the orientation of the film, it goes this way, so we need to wind it. It'll start off fairly tough because I'm pulling the entire length of the film. And it should slowly get easier as you get towards the end. And you want to really make sure that you've wound the whole thing in before you take it out. And you'll feel when it gets to the end, it'll suddenly get much easier to turn. There we go, there's a little clicking sound as it flicked across, and it's now really easy to turn. I'm quite confident that's in. So I'm going to open up the back of the camera. There we go. Oops, hard to do when I'm not really looking at it. There we go. So, as I was saying before, that's now fully inside the canister, and that is ready to be taken off to a lab to be processed. And just remember, every time you load new film, make sure you set that ASA, because otherwise all your exposures will be wrong. So there you have it. That is a 50-year-old Olympus OM-1 film SLR.